The applause thundered through the Chicago Marriott ballroom as I stepped away from the podium, my presentation slides still glowing behind me. Innovative approaches to pediatric congenital heart defect research. 2 years of my life condensed into 20 minutes that could change everything. The standing ovation felt surreal, dreamlike, as if I were watching someone else receive recognition for work that had consumed every waking moment. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28, a cardiology researcher at Northwestern Memorial, and this moment should have been the pinnacle of my career. Instead, something felt wrong. Terribly, inexplicably wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The dizziness hit first, a spinning sensation that made the ballroom's crystal chandeliers blur into streaks of light. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart's irregular rhythm beneath my ribs, like a bird frantically beating against a cage. This wasn't my usual arrhythmia. This was something else entirely. "Dr. Carter?" A colleague's voice seemed to come from underwater. "Are you all right?" I tried to smile, to brush off the concern, but my legs felt like they were dissolving beneath me. The faces in the crowd shifted from admiration to alarm as I gripped the edge of the nearest table, my knuckles white against the burgundy tablecloth. "Just need some air," I managed, but even those 3 words left me breathless. The chest pain struck like lightning, sharp, crushing, radiating down my left arm with a ferocity that dropped me to my knees. Around me, voices rose in panic. Someone shouted for a doctor, which would have been funny if I weren't dying. Half the room was full of cardiologists, and here I was, a heart researcher who couldn't save herself. The paramedics arrived with practiced efficiency, their hands steady as they checked my vitals. 28-year-old female, chest pain and syncope, history of congenital heart defect, BP dropping, pulse thready and irregular. As they loaded me onto the stretcher, I caught glimpses of my colleagues' shocked faces. Dr. Matthews from Johns Hopkins, who'd complimented my research methodology. Dr. Singh from Mayo, who'd invited me to collaborate. They watched helplessly as my moment of triumph transformed into a medical emergency. Chicago General, ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes felt like eternity as I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body betraying everything I thought I knew about my condition. I'd been managing my congenital heart defect since childhood. I knew every medication, every dosage, every warning sign. This shouldn't be happening. Not now. Not when everything was finally falling into place. The emergency room doors burst open like a dam breaking. Harsh fluorescent lights replaced the ballroom's warm glow as medical personnel swarmed around my gurney. Through the controlled chaos, I heard a clear, authoritative voice cutting through the noise. "I'm Dr. Alana Reyes, cardiology. What do we have?" She appeared in my field of vision, a woman in her early 40s with kind but sharp eyes and steady hands that immediately went to work. Something about her presence made the panic recede slightly, replaced by a professional calm that reminded me why I'd chosen medicine. "Congenital heart defect," I whispered through the oxygen mask. "VSD repair at age 5, on digoxin, metoprolol, lisinopril." Dr. Reyes nodded, her fingers already checking my pulse. "When did you last take your medications?" "This morning, same time as always, 7 a.m. with breakfast." Her eyebrows drew together slightly, a small frown that I might have missed if I weren't studying her face for reassurance. "We're going to get you stabilized and run some tests. Try to relax." But as she worked, connecting monitors and ordering blood draws, I caught something in her expression that made my chest tighten for reasons beyond the pain. It was the look of a doctor who was seeing something that didn't quite add up. The automatic doors whooshed open again, and suddenly my mother was there. Margaret Carter burst into the ER with the dramatic flair she'd perfected over decades of charity galas and society events. Her designer heels clicked urgently against the linoleum as she rushed to my bedside, her face a mask of maternal concern. "My baby!" she gasped, immediately taking control of the situation as she always did. What happened? Is she going to be all right? Dr. Reyes looked up from my chart. Mrs. Carter, I presume. Your daughter experienced a significant cardiac episode. We're running tests to determine the cause. But she takes her medications religiously, my mother insisted, her manicured hands squeezing mine. She's always been so careful about her condition, haven't you, sweetheart? I nodded, weakly. But something in the way Dr. Reyes's eyes shifted between my mother and I made me uneasy, as if she were seeing a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite add up.
Of course she has, my mother continued, settling into the chair beside my bed like she belonged there. I make sure of it. Those 5 words, I make sure of it, would later haunt me. But in that moment, surrounded by the familiar rhythm of my mother's protective presence and Dr. Reyes's competent care, I felt safer than I had since the collapse. I had no idea that safety was an illusion and that my real fight for survival was just beginning. The lab results arrived at 6:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was staring at the clock on the wall, counting the minutes until I could go home and pretend this never happened. Dr. Reyes entered my room with the manila folder in her hand, but her expression had changed since yesterday. The professional concern was still there, but now it was layered with something else, something that made my stomach clench with anticipation. "Emily," she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. Her voice was gentle, but I could hear the tension underneath. "I need to ask you some questions about your medications." Of course, I pushed myself up against the pillows, trying to project the competence that had earned me recognition in the cardiology field. I've been on the same regimen for years. Digoxin, 0.25 milligrams daily, metoprolol, 50 milligrams twice daily, lisinopril. "That's what your prescription records show," Dr. Reyes interrupted softly, "but that's not what your blood work shows." The words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean?" She opened the folder and pulled out a lab report covered in numbers that should have made sense to me but suddenly looked like hieroglyphics. "Your toxicology screening shows no trace of any of your prescribed cardiac medications. No digoxin, no beta blockers, no ACE inhibitors, nothing." "That's impossible." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I take them every morning, same routine for 15 years. Dr. Reyes leaned forward, her eyes searching my face. "Emily, when was the last time you missed a dose?" "I don't miss doses." A voice cracked with frustration. "You don't understand. I can't miss doses. My condition—" "I know what your condition requires. That's what makes this so concerning. Have you been experiencing any unusual symptoms lately? Fatigue beyond normal? Episodes of weakness?" I started to shake my head, then stopped. "Actually, yes. For the past few months, I've been feeling off, more tired than usual, dizzy spells, but I attributed it to work stress." "What about your medications themselves? Have you noticed anything different about them? Color, size, taste?" Before I could answer, the door swung open. My mother sailed in with her usual perfect timing, carrying a vase of white roses and wearing the expression of a woman who'd spent the night worried sick about her daughter. "Emily, darling, you look so much better," she announced, setting the flowers on the windowsill. "Dr. Reyes, I hope you have good news for us." Something in the air shifted. I watched Dr. Reyes's face close off slightly, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Mrs. Carter, I was just discussing Emily's lab results with her." "Oh!" My mother's smile never wavered, but I caught the subtle tightening around her eyes. "Nothing serious, I hope." "The toxicology screening shows some irregularities," Dr. Reyes said carefully. "I'm recommending we keep Emily for additional observation." My mother's laugh was light, dismissive. "Oh, hospital lab work can be so unreliable, can't it? I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. Emily has always been meticulous about her medications, haven't you, sweetheart?" The way she looked at me, expectant, controlling, triggered something familiar. A lifetime of being guided toward the right answers, the responses that kept the family harmony intact. But this time felt different. This time, lives were at stake. I hesitated, Dr. Reyes' sharp eyes tracking every micro-expression on my face. "I thought I was being careful." "You see?" My mother beamed at Dr. Reyes. "Sometimes these tests just get confused. Emily has been taking her medications from the same prescription bottle for months. I picked them up from the pharmacy myself just last week." Dr. Reyes nodded slowly, but I could see her filing away every word. Mrs. Carter, would it be possible for someone to bring in Emily's current medication bottles, just so we can verify everything matches her prescriptions? Of course, she said without missing a beat, though I'm sure that won't be necessary. Emily just needs rest and familiar surroundings. Perhaps we could arrange for her discharge today.
I'm afraid that's not possible. Dr. Reyes's voice carried a finality that made my mother's smile falter slightly. Given the severity of yesterday's episode and the, inconsistencies in her lab work, I'm ordering Emily to remain under observation for at least another 48 hours. Inconsistencies? My mother's tone sharpened just enough for me to notice, though her expression remained perfectly controlled. What exactly are you suggesting, Doctor? I'm not suggesting anything, Dr. Reyes replied evenly. I'm simply following standard protocol for unexplained cardiac events in patients with known heart conditions. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken tension. I found myself studying my mother's face, looking for cracks in the facade of maternal concern. For the first time in my life, I wondered what she was really thinking behind those perfectly controlled features. Well, my mother finally said, her smile returning full force, of course we want what's best for Emily. Though I do think familiar surroundings would be more healing than this sterile environment. Dr. Reyes stood, clutching my file against her chest. I understand your concern, Mrs. Carter, but right now Emily needs medical supervision. She turned to me. I'm going to arrange for your medications to be administered directly by the nursing staff while you're here, just as a precaution. After she left, my mother settled into the chair beside my bed, her hand covering mine with its familiar weight. But for the first time, that weight felt less like comfort and more like constraint. Darling, she said softly, you know how doctors can be. They like to make mountains out of molehills, especially when it comes to liability issues. I nodded, but Dr. Reyes's words echoed in my mind. No trace of any cardiac medications after 15 years of religious compliance? How is that possible? I'm sure everything will be fine, my mother continued, her thumb stroking across my knuckles. But we just need to be patient and let them run their little tests. Soon you'll be home where you belong. But as I lay there, watching her arrange the white roses in their vase, I couldn't shake the feeling that home might not be the sanctuary I'd always believed it to be. The tension in my hospital room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. My mother sat rigid in the visitors' chair, her designer handbag clutched in her lap like armor, while Dr. Reyes stood at the foot of my bed with arms crossed. 2 hours had passed since Dr. Reyes announced I would remain under observation, and my mother's facade of patient understanding was beginning to crack. I really don't see why Emily can't receive the same level of care at home, my mother said, her voice strained with barely controlled frustration. We have a private nurse on call, and our family physician has been treating Emily's condition for years. Dr. Reyes didn't flinch. Mrs. Carter, your daughter experienced a near-fatal cardiac episode. The medication irregularities in her system require careful monitoring that can only be provided in a hospital setting. Medication irregularities. My mother repeated the words like they left a bad taste in her mouth. You keep using that phrase, but Emily has been taking her prescribed medications exactly as directed. If your tests show otherwise, perhaps the problem lies with your laboratory procedures. I watched this verbal sparring match from my hospital bed, feeling like a chess piece being moved around a board I couldn't see clearly. Something was happening here. Some battle for control that went beyond normal maternal concern. Our lab procedures are quite thorough, Dr. Reyes replied calmly. But I've ordered a second round of tests just to be certain. In the meantime, Emily will receive her cardiac medications intravenously under direct nursing supervision. That seems excessive. Emily is perfectly capable of managing her own medication schedule. She's a doctor herself. A researcher, I corrected, quietly, surprised by my own voice. I'm not a practicing physician.
My mother's sharp look silenced me immediately. It was the look I'd known since childhood, the one that said I'd stepped out of line, spoken when I should have stayed quiet. The door opened, and my father entered with his lawyer's practiced composure. Daniel Carter moved through the world like he owned it. His expensive suit and confident stride commanded attention. Even in a hospital room, he managed to project an aura of control. "Dr. Reyes," he said, extending his hand with a politician's smile. "Daniel Carter, Emily's father. I understand there's been some confusion about her treatment plan." Dr. Reyes shook his hand, but didn't return the smile. "No confusion, Mr. Carter. Emily needs continued medical supervision." Of course, my father's tone was reasonable, persuasive. "But you have to understand, doctor, this situation has the potential to become complicated. Emily has a promising career ahead of her. Any medical incident that suggests instability or unreliability could be professionally damaging." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Dad, what are you talking about?"
Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. He turned to me with that paternal expression I'd seen him use with juries, concerned but firm. "Sweetheart, we just want to protect your reputation. You know how the medical community can be about these things. If word gets out that you had some kind of episode, that there were questions about your medication compliance." "But I haven't been non-compliant," I said, confusion making my voice small. "Of course not," my mother interjected quickly. "That's exactly why we need to handle this quietly. Take you home, let you recover in private, avoid any unnecessary speculation." Dr. Reyes stepped forward, her jaw tight with controlled anger. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, with all due respect, your daughter's health takes priority over any reputational concerns. She experienced a serious cardiac event that could have killed her, which is why she needs to be with family," my father said smoothly. "Dr. Wilson has been Emily's cardiologist since childhood. He knows her case intimately. I'm sure he'd be happy to consult with you about transitioning her care back to his supervision." Dr. Wilson. The name made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't pinpoint why. He'd always been pleasant enough during my routine checkups, agreeing with whatever treatment plan my mother suggested, never asking too many questions about my symptoms or how I felt between visits. "I'm not familiar with Dr. Wilson's work," Dr. Reyes said carefully. "Perhaps you could have him send over Emily's complete medical records." Something passed between my parents. A look so quick I almost missed it, but Dr. Reyes caught it too, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Actually," she continued, "I'd like to review Emily's entire medical history myself, all hospitalizations, medication changes, dosage adjustments over the years." "That's not necessary," my mother said quickly. "Emily's condition has been very stable. Routine management, nothing dramatic." But I was remembering things, episodes of weakness that had sent me to bed for days. Times when my heart medication seemed less effective, when I felt dizzy and strange. My parents had always attributed it to stress, to my demanding career, to the natural progression of my condition. "The records would be helpful," I said quietly. My mother's hand tightened on mine. "Emily, darling, you're exhausted. You don't need to worry about paperwork right now." Dr. Reyes was watching this exchange with the intensity of a hawk studying prey. "Emily, this is your decision to make. You're the patient." For a moment, the room was silent, except for the soft beeping of my heart monitor. I looked at my parents, my mother's perfectly composed face, my father's concerned but calculating expression, and felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I wondered if their version of protection was actually a cage. The door burst open and Olivia Hart rushed in like a whirlwind. My best friend since graduate school took one look at me in the hospital bed and burst into tears. "Jesus, Em, I came as soon as I heard. The conference, the ambulance, are you okay?" She stopped short when she noticed my parents. "Oh, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Carter." "Hello, Olivia," my mother said coolly.
They'd never liked each other, my mother finding Olivia too outspoken, too willing to challenge the family narrative. Olivia ignored their obvious disapproval and pulled up a chair beside my bed. "Tell me everything. What happened?" "It was just a cardiac episode," my father said before I could answer. "Emily's been under a lot of stress with her research. We're arranging to take her home for proper rest." "Home?" Olivia looked confused. "But shouldn't she be here where they can monitor her heart?" "That's what I've been trying to explain. Emily needs continued medical supervision." Olivia studied my face with the intensity of someone who'd known me for 8 years. "Em, what do you want to do?" The question hung in the air like a lifeline. What did I want to do? For so long, I'd let my parents guide my medical decisions, trusting their judgment, accepting their version of what was best for me. But now, with Dr. Reyes's concerned eyes, Olivia's fierce loyalty, and my parents' subtle pressure, all focused on me, I realized I had to choose. "I want to stay," I said quietly. "I want to understand what happened to me." My mother's face went perfectly still. My father's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But Dr. Reyes nodded with something that looked like relief. "Good," she said firmly. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Emily. I promise you that."
As my parents exchanged another one of their loaded glances, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't experienced in years. The terrifying, exhilarating sensation of making my own choice about my own life. But I had no idea how dangerous that choice would prove to be. Dr. Reyes appeared in my doorway at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying what looked like a decade's worth of medical files. The determined set of her jaw told me she'd been up most of the night, and the grim expression on her face suggested she'd found exactly what she'd been looking for. "Emily," she said, settling into the chair beside my bed, "I've been reviewing your medical history, all of it, going back 15 years. My stomach clenched. "And?" She opened the thick folder and spread several pages across my bedside table. Charts, lab results, hospital admission records, a paper trail of my life with heart disease. "Tell me about March 2019. You were hospitalized for 3 days with what was documented as medication adjustment complications." I frowned, trying to remember. I'd been feeling awful for weeks, dizzy, weak, chest pain. My parents said my body was rejecting the new dosage Dr. Wilson had prescribed. "According to these records, your digoxin levels were dangerously low despite supposedly taking increased doses," Dr. Reyes pointed to a lab report. "Then there's August 2021, another hospitalization for cardiac instability. Same pattern, low medication levels, unexplained symptoms." "But those were just adjustments," I protested, even as something cold was creeping up my spine. "Dr. Wilson said some patients are sensitive to dosage changes." Dr. Reyes pulled out another sheet. "Emily, in the past 5 years, you've had 7 episodes requiring medical intervention. Each time, your blood work showed medication levels far below therapeutic range, despite documented compliance." The room seemed to spin slightly. That's not possible." "It's not just possible, it's documented." Her voice was gentle but relentless. "Look at this pattern. Every episode occurs during periods when you're living at home, when your medications are being managed by your family." I stared at the papers, numbers and dates that should have made sense but felt like foreign language. "What are you saying?" Before she could answer, Olivia knocked and entered, carrying coffee and the expression of someone who'd been thinking hard all night. I brought your favorite latte, but more importantly, I brought this." She pulled a small plastic bag from her purse, one of my medication bottles from my apartment. "I grabbed this from your bathroom cabinet. Thought the doctor might want to see it." Dr. Reyes accepted the bottle with gloved hands, examining the pills through the plastic. Her eyebrows drew together. "These don't look right." "What do you mean?" I asked, though my heart was already racing. "Digoxin tablets are usually yellow with specific markings. These are white, unmarked." She looked up at me. "Emily, where do you typically get your prescriptions filled?" "The same pharmacy for years, Westfield Pharmacy on Oak Street, but my mother usually picks them up for me when I'm busy with work." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's face had gone pale, and Dr. Reyes was staring at the bottle like it contained poison. "Dr. Reyes," I whispered, "what are you thinking?" She set the bottle down carefully.
I'm thinking we need to have these pills analyzed immediately, and I'm thinking you need to tell me about every time your medications were handled by someone else. My mind raced backward through years of episodes, hospitalizations, unexplained setbacks. My mother has always managed my medications. She's so organized, so careful. She sets up my weekly pill organizer, coordinates with the pharmacy. Emily, Olivia said quietly, remember last year when you stayed at my place for a week after your water heater broke? You felt better than you had in months? I do remember. I'd attributed it to the break from work stress, but now I brought my own pills that week, the ones from my medicine cabinet. Dr. Reyes was already reaching for her phone. I'm calling the lab for an emergency analysis of these pills. And Emily, I need you to think very carefully about this question. Has anyone ever had unlimited access to your medication supply? The answer hit me like a physical blow. My mother has keys to my apartment. She restocks my medicine cabinet monthly, organizes everything. She says it's easier than having me make multiple pharmacy trips. Jesus, Em, your mother controls your entire medication supply.
Dr. Reyes was already dialing. Lab, this is Dr. Reyes in cardiology. I need an emergency analysis on suspicious pills. Possible medication tampering case? Her voice faded as the implications crashed over me. Someone had been systematically poisoning me. Someone who claimed to love me, who'd raised me, who I trusted with my life. Someone who'd watched me suffer through years of unexplained episodes and had comforted me through each one. There has to be another explanation, I said desperately. My mother wouldn't. She couldn't. But even as I said it, I was remembering the look that had passed between my parents when Dr. Reyes mentioned reviewing my medical records, the way my mother had tried so hard to get me discharged, her insistence that I didn't need to worry about paperwork. Dr. Reyes finished her call and turned back to me. Emily, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to consider the possibility that someone close to you has been deliberately interfering with your medication. My mother loves me, I whispered, but the words felt hollow. I'm sure she does, Dr. Reyes said carefully, but love and control can sometimes become dangerously tangled. And right now, we need to focus on keeping you safe while we figure out exactly what's been happening. As she left to expedite the lab results, I sat in stunned silence, with Olivia holding my hand. 15 years of trusting my family with my life, and now everything I thought I knew was crumbling around me. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the growing certainty that this was only the beginning. My mother arrived at 2 p.m., earlier than her usual visiting time, carrying a small cooler bag and wearing an expression I'd rarely seen, steel wrapped in silk. She dismissed Olivia with a polite but cold, "Could we have some privacy, dear?" That wasn't really a question. Once we were alone, she set the cooler on the windowsill and pulled her chair close to my bed. Too close. Close enough that I could smell her familiar perfume, see the careful calculation behind her concerned expression. "Emily, darling," she began, her voice carrying that dangerous sweetness I remembered from childhood confrontations. "I've been hearing troubling things from the nurses. Something about medication testing?" My mouth went dry. "Dr. Reyes is just being thorough." "Thorough." She repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "Emily, this doctor is turning a simple cardiac episode into some kind of investigation. Do you understand how damaging this could be to our family?" "Damaging?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Mother, I nearly died." Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Then it was back, the perfect mother concerned for her fragile daughter. "Of course you did, sweetheart, and that's exactly why we need to handle this properly, with discretion." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Dr. Reyes is an outsider. She doesn't understand our family, our situation. She's looking for problems where none exist. But Mother, the lab results. Lab results can be manipulated, misinterpreted, falsified." Her voice carried absolute certainty. Emily, you're a researcher. You know how easy it is to make data say whatever you want it to say. I stared at her, this woman who'd raised me, who'd sat beside my hospital bed through childhood surgeries, who'd celebrated every academic achievement. And you're saying Dr. Reyes is lying? I'm saying she's ambitious. A young doctor looking to make a name for herself by finding conspiracies where none exist. My mother's fingers found mine, squeezing with practiced warmth. Think about it, darling. What's more likely? That someone who loves you has been trying to hurt you? Or that an opportunistic doctor is creating drama for her own benefit? The logic felt wrong, but her words carried the weight of 28 years of conditioning. My mother had always been my protector, my advocate, my strongest supporter. Hadn't she? But Mother, the pills Olivia brought in could have been contaminated in transit, mislabeled at the pharmacy, any number of innocent explanations. She pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed at imaginary tears. Emily, it breaks my heart that you're even considering such horrible possibilities about your own family. Guilt crashed over me in waves. This was my mother, who'd sacrificed her social life to care for me, who'd researched every treatment option, who'd never missed a single medical appointment. I know you love me, I whispered. More than my own life, she said fiercely, which is why I need you to understand something very important. Her grip on my hand tightened. Your father's law firm is up for a major
Partnership review. Any hint of scandal, any suggestion of impropriety could destroy everything he's worked for. I blinked, confused by the sudden shift. What does that have to do with everything, Emily? Everything. If this doctor's wild theories get out, if there's even a whisper of investigation into our family, your father's career is over. 25 years of building his reputation. Gone. The familiar weight of family obligation pressed down on me. I'd grown up understanding that my needs came second to the family's public image, that my medical condition was a private burden not to be discussed outside our inner circle. And your life insurance policy, she continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. $2 million, Emily. Enough to secure your father's retirement, to maintain the family home, to preserve everything we've built together. The words hit me like ice water. My life insurance? Well, of course you have life insurance, darling. It's just practical planning. Her smile was gentle, maternal. But if there's an investigation, if there are questions about your medical care, the insurance company might delay or deny any claims. That would be unfortunate for everyone. I stared at her, this woman I'd trusted with my life, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. Mother, are you suggesting that my death would be convenient for the family? Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. But there was something flat in her eyes now, something that made my skin crawl. I'm simply explaining the realities of our situation. Sometimes what seems like protection from outsiders is actually the most loving thing we can do for each other. She reached into her purse and pulled out my phone, which I'd been too sick to ask about. I've been fielding calls from your colleagues telling them you're taking a brief medical leave for exhaustion. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would raise questions about your competency. You've been answering my phone? Someone had to handle things while you were unconscious. She set it on my bedside table. I also took the liberty of calling Dr. Wilson. He's prepared to take over your care immediately, get you transferred back to his clinic where you'll be more comfortable. The walls felt like they were closing in. I told Dr. Reyes I wanted to stay here. Did you? My mother's voice carried a note of surprise that felt calculated. Well, sometimes when we're sick and confused, we don't make the best decisions. That's what family is for, to help us see clearly when we can't see for ourselves. She reached into her purse and pulled out my phone,
which I'd been too sick to ask about. I've been fielding calls from your colleagues telling them you're taking a brief medical leave for exhaustion. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would raise questions about your competency. You've been answering my phone? Someone had to handle things while you were unconscious. She set it on my bedside table. I also took the liberty of calling Dr. Wilson. He's prepared to take over your care immediately, get you transferred back to his clinic where you'll be more comfortable. The walls felt like they were closing in. I told Dr. Reyes I wanted to stay here. Did you? My mother's voice carried a note of surprise that felt calculated. Well, sometimes when we're sick and confused, we don't make the best decisions. That's what family is for, to help us see clearly when we can't see for ourselves. She reached into her purse and pulled out a familiar orange pill bottle, the same one Olivia had taken for testing, or one identical to it. Where did you get those? From your medicine cabinet, of course, where they've always been. Her smile was beatific. Emily, darling, I think it's time we got you somewhere safe, somewhere you can recover without all this unnecessary drama and suspicion. As she spoke, I realized with crystal clarity that she was right about one thing. I definitely needed to get somewhere safe, but it wasn't with her. The small digital recorder sat on my bedside table like a sleeping snake. I'd been staring at it for 20 minutes, my mother's words from yesterday echoing in my mind with new and terrifying clarity. Olivia had smuggled it in that morning, hidden in a box of tissues, whispering urgently that I needed to document everything. Just in case, she had said, but we both knew it wasn't just in case anymore. Dr. Reyes knocked and entered, followed by a woman I didn't recognize, tall, sharp-eyed, wearing a detective's badge clipped to her belt. My heart rate spiked, setting off the monitor's gentle alarm. Dr. Carter, Dr. Reyes has shared some concerning information about your case. I'd like to ask you a few questions if you're feeling up to it. I glanced at Dr. Reyes, who nodded encouragingly. The lab results came back on those pills Olivia brought in. They're sugar tablets, Emily. Lactose and cornstarch, with trace amounts of artificial coloring to mimic your actual medication. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. Sugar pills? Someone has been systematically replacing your life-saving heart medication with harmless placebo tablets, Dr. Ellis said matter-of-factly. Dr. Reyes tells me your mother has exclusive access to your medication supply.
She has keys to my apartment, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She restocks everything monthly. Detective Ellis made a note. How long has this arrangement been in place? Years, since I started graduate school. She said it was easier than having me manage multiple pharmacy runs with my work schedule. And during this time, you've experienced multiple cardiac episodes requiring hospitalization. I nodded, shame burning in my chest. How had I been so blind? But, Detective, my mother loves me. She's sacrificed everything for my medical care. There has to be another explanation. Dr. Reyes leaned forward. Emily, yesterday I was reviewing your medical files when something odd happened. Hospital security called to report an attempted unauthorized entry into your room around 2 a.m. My blood turned to ice. What? Someone tried to enter using what appeared to be a family visitor badge, but they'd mixed up the room numbers. When security approached, the person claimed to be checking on a different patient and left quickly. Did they see who it was? A middle-aged woman, well-dressed, carrying what looked like a medical bag. Dr. Reyes's eyes met mine. Security footage shows someone matching your mother's description. Detective Ellis flipped through her notebook. Emily, I need to ask about your mother's financial situation. Has she mentioned any money troubles recently? Any changes in lifestyle or spending? I thought about the designer handbag, the fresh manicure, the expensive flowers she'd brought. No, nothing like that. If anything, she seems to have more disposable income lately. What about your insurance policy? The question made my skin crawl. She mentioned it yesterday, said it was worth $2 million.
I didn't even know I had a policy that large. Detective Ellis and Dr. Reyes exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. Emily, the detective said carefully, when was the last time you actually saw your insurance paperwork? I don't think I ever have. My mother handles all my medical and financial paperwork. She says it's too stressful for me to worry about. We'll need to subpoena those records, Detective Ellis making another note. Dr. Reyes, has the hospital implemented the medication security protocols we discussed? As of yesterday, Emily's medications are stored in a locked cabinet accessible only to authorized nursing staff. No family members are permitted to handle her pills directly. I felt like I was drowning. Detective, what happens next? First, we're going to keep you safe. No one except medical staff will have access to your medications. Second, we're going to gather evidence. I need you to think carefully about every interaction you've had with your mother regarding your health care. Anytime she seemed overly controlling, any instances where you felt worse after she'd been managing your pills. My mind raced backward through years of episodes, setbacks, unexplained symptoms. There were times when I felt better when I was away from home, when I managed my own medications. Like when you stayed at Olivia's last year? Yes, and during a research conference in Boston 2 years ago, I felt stronger than I had in months. Detective Ellis nodded grimly. We'll need detailed statements about all of this. And Emily, I have to ask, are you prepared for where this investigation might lead? I looked at these two women, who'd become my protectors, my advocates, in a world where my own family might be my enemy. Detective, someone has been slowly killing me for years. Someone I trusted completely. I need to know the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Good, she said, standing, because I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here. As they left to coordinate their investigation, I picked up the small recorder and pressed play, listening to my mother's voice from yesterday. Your life insurance policy. $2 million. Enough to secure your father's retirement. For the first time in my life, I heard those words for what they really were. Not a mother's practical planning, but a predator calculating the value of my death. The evidence spread across my bedside table looked like pieces of a horrific puzzle finally clicking into place. Detective Ellis had returned with laboratory reports, financial records, and a timeline that painted 15 years of systematic medical abuse in stark, undeniable detail.
The sugar pills are confirmed, she said, her voice steady but grim. But that's just the beginning. We subpoenaed your insurance records, Emily. The policy was taken out 3 years ago with your mother as the sole beneficiary. Dr. Reyes pointed to a medical chart. Look at this pattern. Every hospitalization coincides with periods when you were living at home, when your mother had complete control of your medication supply. The 3 times you managed your own pills, the Boston conference, your stay at Olivia's, that week you were too sick to let her into your apartment, your cardiac function improved dramatically. My hands trembled as I studied the timeline. She's been poisoning me for 3 years? Longer, Detective Ellis said quietly. The sugar pill substitution started 3 years ago, but the medical manipulation goes back much further. Dr. Wilson, your family physician, has been filing falsified reports about your condition for nearly a decade. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. Dr. Wilson knew? He's been paid substantial sums to misrepresent your medical needs, to support your mother's version of events. Detective Ellis flipped through her notes. We found payment records, Emily. Your mother has been systematically bribing medical professionals to keep you sick and dependent. Dr. Reyes leaned forward. Emily, we need to know. Are you prepared to testify against your mother? To press charges for attempted murder? The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Attempted murder. My mother. Who'd sung lullabies when I was scared, who'd held my hand through surgery, who'd made my favorite soup when I was sick. She tried to kill me, I whispered, the reality finally sinking in completely. Not tried, Detective Ellis corrected gently. She's been slowly killing you for years. The only reason you're alive is because your body is stronger than she calculated. I thought about all the times I'd felt guilty for being a burden, for requiring so much medical care, for limiting my family's freedom. All those years, she'd been manufacturing my illness, creating the very dependency she claimed to resent. I'll testify, I said, my voice growing stronger. I'll tell everyone what she did.
Detective Ellis nodded approvingly. Good, because tomorrow morning, we're executing a warrant for Margaret Carter's arrest. The call came at 6:47 a.m., Olivia's panicked voice crackling through my hospital phone. "Em, turn on Channel 7 News. Now." I fumbled for the remote, my heart pounding as the local morning show flickered to life. There, in crystal clear HD, was my childhood home surrounded by police cars, their red and blue lights painting the perfect suburban lawn in harsh, accusatory colors. And prominent Chicago socialite Margaret Carter was arrested this morning on charges of attempted murder and medical fraud in connection with the systematic poisoning of her daughter. The victim, Dr. Emily Carter, a respected cardiology researcher, was allegedly given sugar pills instead of life-saving heart medication over a period of several years. My phone exploded with calls. Colleagues, distant relatives, reporters who'd somehow gotten my number. Olivia arrived within the hour, breathless and shaking. "Your father's been arrested too," she said, collapsing into the visitor's chair. "Obstruction of justice, conspiracy, financial fraud. It's all over the news." Dr. Reyes appeared in the doorway, her face grave. "Emily, I'm so sorry this has become so public. We tried to keep it quiet, but—" "It's okay," I interrupted, surprised by my own calm. "People should know. Other families need to know this can happen." On television, they were showing my research conference photo alongside my mother's mugshot. The contrast was jarring. My moment of professional triumph beside her moment of ultimate disgrace. "Dr. Wilson has been suspended pending investigation," Dr. Reyes continued. "We're discovering an entire network of complicit medical professionals. Your mother wasn't working alone." The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Years of coordinated deception, multiple doctors, falsified records, all designed to keep me sick and dependent while slowly killing me. My extended family had already begun choosing sides. Aunt Patricia called to scream about family loyalty and media circuses. Uncle Robert sent flowers with a note apologizing for not seeing the signs sooner. "The trial will be difficult," Detective Ellis warned during her afternoon visit. "Your mother's defense team will try to paint you as an unreliable narrator, someone whose medical condition affects her memory and judgment."
Let them, I said firmly. I have 15 years of medical records that tell the real story. That evening, as the news cycle continued its relentless coverage, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the absence of fear. For the first time since childhood, I knew exactly where my mother was, and she couldn't hurt me. The courthouse steps were a circus of reporters and photographers, their cameras clicking like hungry insects as Detective Ellis escorted me through the crowd. 6 months had passed since the arrest, 6 months of depositions and medical evaluations and careful preparation for this moment. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than I'd expected. My mother sat at the defendant's table in a navy suit that made her look professional and sympathetic. She'd lost weight, her face thinner but still beautiful, still capable of commanding attention and evoking sympathy. The prosecution calls Dr. Alana Reyes to the stand. I watched Dr. Reyes take the oath, her voice clear and confident as she began laying out the medical evidence. Charts, lab results, expert testimony about the effects of prolonged medication substitution. She explained how sugar pills had slowly weakened my heart, how each hospitalization had brought me closer to complete cardiac failure. "In your professional opinion," the prosecutor asked, "what would have been the eventual outcome if this substitution had continued?" "Death," Dr. Reyes said simply. Emily's heart function was deteriorating systematically. Without intervention, she would have died within 6 to 12 months. My mother's lawyer cross-examined aggressively, suggesting Dr. Reyes was an ambitious physician seeking publicity, that hospital errors could explain the medication discrepancies. But the evidence was overwhelming, the pattern too clear to dismiss. The prosecution calls Olivia Hart. My best friend took the stand with fierce determination, describing the time she'd noticed my mysterious improvement when away from family oversight. She testified about my mother's controlling behavior, the subtle ways she'd isolated me from friends who might question the family narrative. Emily was always sickest after spending time at home.
Olivia said, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. I thought it was stress, but now I know it was poisoning. When they called my name, the courtroom fell completely silent. I walked to the witness stand on steady legs, feeling the weight of my mother's gaze, but refusing to look at her. Please state your name for the record. Dr. Emily Rose Carter. The prosecution guided me through years of medical manipulation, the slow erosion of my health, the psychological impact of believing I was a burden to my family. I described my mother's visit after the arrest, her chilling reference to my life insurance policy, her demand for silence in the name of family loyalty. Emily, the prosecutor said gently, do you believe your mother intended to kill you? I finally looked at her then, this woman who'd given me life and then spent years trying to take it away. Her face was composed, almost serene, as if she were attending a dinner party rather than her own murder trial. Yes, I said clearly, I believe my mother was slowly murdering me for insurance money, and she would have succeeded if Dr. Reyes hadn't intervened. The defense's cross-examination was brutal, as expected. They painted me as mentally unstable, suggested my medical condition had affected my judgment, implied I was an ungrateful daughter destroying my family for attention. But the evidence spoke louder than their accusations. Sugar pills, falsified medical records, financial motives, a clear pattern of abuse spanning years. When the guilty verdict was read, my mother's face finally cracked. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw something cold and predatory underneath. Then it was gone, replaced by the dignified resignation of a woman wrongly convicted. As they led her away to begin her 25-year sentence, I felt something I'd never expected. Not satisfaction, but profound sadness for the mother I'd thought I had, who had never really existed at all. 1 year later. The community center piano was slightly out of tune, but my fingers found the keys with the same muscle memory that once had made me a promising concert pianist in another life. The melody of Claire de Lune drifted across the room where 15 women sat in a circle, each carrying their own story of family betrayal, medical abuse, and hard-won survival. Music therapy has been incredibly healing for me, I said, letting the final notes fade before turning back to the group. It reminds me that my hands can create beauty, not just document the ways people have tried to destroy me. Sarah, a 23-year-old whose grandmother had been poisoning her with insulin to maintain control, wiped tears from her eyes. How do you trust anyone again? How do you know who's safe?
It was the question they all asked, the one that had haunted my own nights for months after the trial. I looked around the circle at these brave women who'd found the courage to speak their truth, to break the silence that had nearly killed them. You start small, I said gently. You trust doctors like Dr. Reyes, who prove they care more about your health than family politics. You trust friends like Olivia, who see the truth even when you can't. And eventually, you learn to trust yourself again. The Emily Carter Medical Advocacy Center occupied the entire third floor of a downtown Chicago building, its walls lined with resources for abuse survivors and medical professionals training to recognize the signs of family-perpetrated medical harm. What had started as my testimony in my mother's trial had grown into something larger, a voice for the voiceless, a light in the darkness that had nearly consumed me. Dr. Reyes appeared in the doorway, her presence as reassuring as it had been that first night in the emergency room. She'd become more than my cardiologist. She was my partner in this work, my chosen family in ways that genetics had never provided. Ladies, she announced to the group, I wanted to share some exciting news. The Illinois State Medical Board has just passed new legislation requiring mandatory reporting protocols for suspected medical abuse within families. Emily's case helped change the law. The applause that followed felt different from the polite recognition I'd received at medical conferences. This was personal, passionate, born from shared survival rather than professional achievement. After the group dispersed, Dr. Reyes and I walked to my office, a space I decorated with photos of survivors who'd found their freedom,
research papers on medical abuse prevention, and a small framed picture of me delivering my conference presentation the day my real life began. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. Tomorrow marked the first anniversary of my mother's sentencing, but more importantly, it marked the launch of our national advocacy program. Medical schools across the country would begin incorporating training on family-perpetrated medical abuse into their curricula, using my case as a foundation for recognizing the warning signs. Nervous, I admitted, but ready. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of what tomorrow might bring. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Dinner tonight? I made your favorite soup, the real healing kind, not the controlling kind." I smiled, typing back my acceptance. Olivia had been my anchor through the darkest months, the friend who'd taught me that family isn't defined by blood, but by who shows up when your world is falling apart. Detective Ellis knocked on the open door, her familiar presence bringing the mix of gratitude and residual trauma that law enforcement often triggered. "Emily, I wanted to update you on the appeals court decision." My heart stuttered slightly, an old anxiety response that Dr. Reyes assured me would fade with time. "And?" "Denied. All charges upheld. Your mother will serve her full sentence." Detective Ellis's expression softened. "She'll be eligible for parole in 20 years, but the medical board restrictions are permanent. She'll never be able to influence anyone's medical care again." 20 years. By then, I'd be 48, hopefully married, maybe with children of my own. Children I'd protect with the fierce love my mother had counterfeited. Children who'd never doubt that their safety mattered more than appearances or money. "There's something else," Detective Ellis continued. 3 more cases have come forward using your advocacy center as a resource. Adult children whose parents were tampering with their medications for control or financial gain. Your work is saving lives. After she left, I sat alone in my office as the Chicago skyline darkened beyond my windows. On my desk sat a stack of letters from survivors across the country, people who'd recognized their own stories in mine and found the courage to seek help. Each letter was a reminder that survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about transforming your trauma into purpose. My computer chimed with an email from a medical student in California. "Dr. Carter, I wanted to thank you for speaking at our school last month. Your presentation helped me recognize signs of medical abuse in one of my pediatric patients. Because of your advocacy, we were able to intervene before serious harm occurred. You saved a child's life by sharing your story." I read the email twice, feeling the familiar mixture of grief and gratitude that accompanied reminders of my purpose. My mother had tried to slowly kill me, but her cruelty had ultimately become the catalyst for protecting others. There was a strange justice in that transformation. The evening air was crisp as I walked to Olivia's apartment, my heart beating strong and steady in my chest. Real medication, prescribed by doctors who answered to medical boards rather than family pressure, had restored not just my physical health, but my faith in my own perceptions. I paused at a crosswalk watching families hurry past in the gathering dusk and felt a profound sense of peace. For 27 years, I'd believed that love meant accepting control, that family loyalty required silence in the face of harm. I'd learned that real love looks like Dr. Reyes refusing to discharge me despite family pressure, like Olivia smuggling in a recorder,
Document abuse, like Detective Ellis pursuing justice, even when it meant destroying a family's public image. My phone rang, an unknown number with a Texas area code. "Dr. Carter, this is Jennifer Walsh from Austin. I saw your interview on the news and I think my husband might be doing something to my medication. I don't know who else to call." I stopped walking, feeling the familiar surge of purpose that had become my North Star. "Jennifer, you've called the right place. Let's talk about what you've been experiencing, and then I'm going to help you get somewhere safe." As I spoke with Jennifer, guiding her through the first steps of recognition and protection, I felt my mother's legacy shifting. She'd intended to leave behind a compliant daughter and a comfortable inheritance. Instead, she'd created an advocate, a voice for the vulnerable, a living testament to the power of speaking truth even when it shatters everything you thought you knew about love. By the time I reached Olivia's building, Jennifer had agreed to seek medical evaluation and police consultation. Another life potentially saved, another family cycle of abuse potentially broken. Olivia met me at her door with a hug that lasted longer than usual. Rough day? Actually, no, I said, surprising myself with the honesty. It was a good day, a day when everything we've built mattered. Over dinner, I told Olivia about Jennifer, about the new legislation, about the anniversary program launching tomorrow. We talked about the future, my potential book about medical abuse recognition, her promotion at the social work agency, our shared dream of expanding the advocacy center nationally. I'm proud of you, Olivia said as we cleared the dishes, not just for surviving, but for what you've done with your survival. Later that evening, alone in my apartment, I stood before the bathroom mirror where I'd once stared at pill bottles without knowing they contained sugar instead of salvation. Now the medicine cabinet held legitimate prescriptions from doctors I trusted, each bottle a symbol of my reclaimed autonomy. I opened my laptop and began typing the opening lines of my memoir. The sharp snap of trust breaking registered before the pain did. My vision tunneled to a pinpoint as my mother's satisfied smile appeared in the hospital's fluorescent reflection. Her eyes locked on mine as she deliberately pressed another sugar pill into my palm. The sickening crunch that followed wasn't just my health being crushed. It was the sound of my family's facade shattering. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29, a medical advocacy expert, and this is the story of how I reclaimed my life from the family that tried to destroy it, heartbeat by heartbeat. Outside my window, Chicago hummed with life, millions of people navigating their own relationships, their own definitions of love and loyalty. Some would recognize themselves in my story. Some would find the courage to question the people they'd trusted most. And some, like Jennifer and Austin, would make that phone call that changes everything. I placed my hand over my heart, feeling its strong, steady rhythm. A rhythm sustained by real medication, protected by chosen family, and dedicated to ensuring that no one else would have to learn the difference between love and control the way I had. The next morning brought unexpected mail, a letter from the Illinois Women's Correctional Center, bearing my mother's careful handwriting. My hands trembled slightly as I held the envelope, but this time the tremor wasn't from fear. It was from the strange anticipation of seeing how she would try to manipulate me, even from behind bars. Emily, the letter began, I hope this finds you well. I've been thinking about you constantly, praying for your health and happiness. I know you must be confused about everything that happened, but I want you to know that everything I did was out of love. I almost laughed at the audacity. Even now, even after conviction and imprisonment, she couldn't acknowledge the truth. The letter continued with familiar manipulations, claims that she'd been protecting me from my own weakness, that the stress of managing my condition had driven her to make mistakes, that she forgave me for the misunderstanding that had torn our family apart. I'm eligible for a compassion release hearing next month due to my age and health concerns. I hope you'll consider writing a letter of support. After all, I'm still your mother. I set the letter down and reached for my phone, scrolling to Dr. Reyes's number. She answered on the first ring. She wrote to you, didn't she? Dr. Reyes said without preamble. How did you know? Because predators never stop being predators, Emily. Even from prison, she's trying to reassert control. We talked for 20 minutes about boundaries, about the ongoing nature of recovery, about how healing isn't linear. By the time I hung up, I knew exactly what to do with my mother's letter.
I fed it through my paper shredder, watching her manipulative words transform into meaningless strips of paper. Then I returned to my memoir, adding a new chapter about the ongoing nature of recovery, about the ways abusers try to maintain control even after consequences. That afternoon, I received a call that changed everything again. Dr. Patricia Williams from the CDC's Violence Prevention Division was on the line, her voice carrying the weight of opportunity. Dr. Carter, we've been following your advocacy work closely.
We'd like to offer you a position heading our new National Medical Abuse Prevention Initiative. It would mean expanding your model nationwide, training medical professionals in all 50 states. I stood at my office window, looking out at the city where my nightmare had begun and my purpose had been born. The position would mean leaving Chicago, leaving the familiar support systems I'd built. But it also meant reaching thousands more potential victims, saving lives on a scale I'd never imagined possible. There's one condition, Dr. Williams continued. We want you to testify before Congress about the need for federal legislation protecting medical abuse victims. Your story would be the foundation for nationwide policy change. Standing before senators and representatives, telling my story to the people who could change laws across the country, the thought terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I'll do it, I said without hesitation. When do we start? As I hung up the phone, I realized this was what transformation looked like. Not just surviving the attempt on my life, not just healing from the betrayal, but taking my mother's cruelest act and turning it into protection for countless others. I picked up my pen and continued writing, my heart beating its strong, steady rhythm as I documented not just what had been done to me, but what I was doing with what remained. This was my new heartbeat, steady, strong, and completely my own.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.